Today is January 789. I'm just kidding. It's January 31st. I wanted to share this really fun chat that I did with Dr. Alexis Cowan over on Instagram. So I'm not going to do a long introduction. I will let you know, however, in the video, we do say if you want the link, then comment app. Obviously, over on YouTube or podcast platform, you're not going to do that. But I will have that link for you as well as the code Alexis if you want to support Dr. Alexis's work, linked in the show notes for you and on YouTube on the pinned comment. So no need to comment that underneath the video. I hope you enjoy this conversation. We talked about light and health and just the basics that people need to really think about at this time of year, especially why sunlight is so important and darkness is so important and how to understand that in your environment. So I hope you enjoy this chat and I will talk with you again soon. Hello, everybody. I cannot get this earbud to stay in my ear. I am going live with my good friend Alexis, Dr. Alexis Cowan today. We're going to talk about sunlight and health. So I will wait for her to ask to join. There she is. And we are just going to chat. So I hope everyone's having a beautiful week. We had a snowstorm here in Georgia last week, and now I'm sitting outside and it's amazing weather. So I'm a lot happier with this. Welcome, everybody. I have accepted her request, so I should see her pop up in a second here. There she is.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good.
I'm excited to be here. I heard about your guys' snow. Is everybody in one piece? I know things like everybody forgets to how to drive when it snows down south.
Well, we just have no equipment here, so everybody is like just shut down. You just stay home. So
wow.
Yeah. I know all the northerners.
How much did you get? Did you get like a couple inches? Like how many inches did you get?
This time we only got like 1 inch, which was hilarious. But 10 days before that, we got 6 to 8 inches. It was a pretty significant snow. So
very good.
I did some barefoot walking in the snow. I did some grounding.
Lovely.
So that my northern friends wouldn't think I'm a complete wuss. But
and it's great because the snow obviously is moisture, and that helps the
Yes.
grounding force to be conducted even more. So you're gonna kind of getting the benefit of that plus the cold and the sun. So it's a good time to be out and about, even if it's just for a few minutes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm super excited. Are you on a walking treadmill or indoor treadmill right now?
I am. Is it loud? That's what I was
No, not at
ask
all.
you.
It just
Okay,
see you
great.
kind of moving.
Yes. No, I'm just dancing here. Just excited to be here. Yeah,
Awesome.
actually, I'm very excited to be here. I'm actually cooking a tomahawk. My partner's taking it off the grill right now, so I'm excited to eat that after this. But I'm really excited to chat, first and foremost, because I think it's a really good time of year to give people access to information that is supportive of their light hygiene, because the sun's starting to come back for much of the northern latitudes, and now is the time to dial in your routines so that you can build that momentum into the summer and really harness all that photonic energy that's available.
Agreed. I know you talk with clients and you have some amazing groups and resources. So anybody that's watching this that isn't following Dr. Alexis, absolutely do that. But I've had so many conversations this month in particular for people who are ready to get their health back on track. And I'm like, this is the best time of year if you're in the Northern Hemisphere to really understand the timing of light and how to be methodical about it to improve your metabolism and your energy, neurotransmitters, neurohormones, all those things get support this time of year. Yeah. And we were going to talk today in particular. I've got a new app that just was released in October. And if you comment or DM the word app underneath this, I'll send you a link. And Dr. Alexis has a code. It's just Alexis, all one word. And if you want to try the free, a trial of it for free, you get 1 month on Apple or 3 weeks on Android, just using that code Alexis. So if you want the link for that, comment app and I'll send it right to you. It's also called My Circadian app. I'm going to try to collab with them after I post this to see if it'll stay up on that page. But
great. Yeah, I've been using the app every single day since you launched it. It's just been such an amazing tool, because before this, everybody in the light biology space, I feel like we were kind of pulling from multiple different apps in order to optimize our lifestyles and our routines. So we were pulling from the Circadian app for like UVA, UVB rise, sunrise,
Yep.
sunset. And then we were pulling from D-Minder for vitamin D tracking. And then, of course, you have like the weather app, which has the UV index. And so your app combines all those together plus more, including the Lux meter, which is just so valuable. Like I never even thought about that before. And the fact that we can use our phone cameras in order to understand like the brightness or the amount of light in our environment is so important, because from a circadian perspective, I mean, when we're thinking about the amount of light that you're supposed to be receiving midday,
Right.
you know, if you're outside, like let's say around noon right now, if I go outside, I'm getting around 100,000 lux of light because it's a nice, you know, clear sunny day. If I'm inside, most indoor environments don't have even over 1,000 lux if you're lucky.
If you're
And so
lucky.
that bright light is so important. Yeah, it's stimulating all like the energizing neurochemicals, creating serotonin, helping with cognition and digestion and mood and all of these great things. And then obviously at nighttime, you kind of want the opposite. You want as little lux as possible. So it's really
Right. Uh-oh.
It's really great to have that lux meter to understand something about like, you know, am I getting enough bright
In the
light during the day and am I
morning.
getting
Yep.
enough darkness at night? And so it's been a really great tool to have in the toolkit, and I recommend it to everybody.
Yeah, I think when people are trying to make changes this time of year and they're like, I want to change my diet, I want to change my workout routine, I want to do it all. I'm like, we have to start here with light first. And I love that you're teaching this with your community as well, because there's so much information. Like, we feel like we have to live and die by scientific studies. And I am like, you know what? Yes, but also we need to look at what's happening anecdotally. But if we do want to actually pull out that research, very bright mornings and very dim evenings have been shown to increase metabolic rate. On the contrary, very dim mornings, which is what most people get if they stay indoors, even if they have 1,000 lux indoors, that's not bright enough.
Yep.
And then their evenings are too bright, and that has been shown to actually slow down metabolic rate. So you can quite literally change your metabolism, appetite regulation, hormone balance by changing that little simple thing. And that's,
100%.
you know, that's why I wanted to have that lux meter with the app, because you're indoors and you're like, I got all the lights on, I got the TV on, it's bright in here. No, it's actually not. It's
Yep.
not, it's not
Totally.
bright enough.
Yeah, that data is really, it keeps you in check, because you may think that, oh, I'm getting enough light, but I mean, that doesn't even call into question the quality of that light, which of course we can
Correct.
talk about, because like sunlight, you're getting far infrared through UVB, depending on time of year and time of day. You know, if you're inside, most light bulbs, if you're using an energy efficient light bulb like an LED or a fluorescent bulb, you're not getting any infrared at all.
Right.
And you're getting a ton of blue and basically no UV. And so that's, you know, a problem in and of itself if we're talking about metabolic health and mitochondrial function. But, you know, outside of that, the brightness alone is also a really, really important metric. So I think it's great that we have a tool that we can use to assess our environment and just like get really clear on like, okay, what do we got to do to make this better? And obviously the best answer is always going back to nature. But for example, right now I'm in my office space. Our service isn't really good on the back patio. So what we're doing is we're getting a Wi-Fi extender into the garage so that I have better service if I need to be out there, because I do like to take interviews outside, like starting in the spring.
Yeah.
And so we're going to do that. But right now I'm in my office, and you know, I have the window cracked and open a bit. The animals love the sun as well. But I'm also using the Chroma Sky portal, which is around 10,000 lux. And I really like that. It clamps onto the edge of the desk. It has an adjustable brightness and adjustable redness. So it's very convenient to like help anchor in healthy light hygiene habits. But yeah, there's different things you can do. Obviously, getting better light bulbs as well. Things like incandescent bulbs, which look like they're back on track to be unbanned, though it's not, from my understanding, it's not fully unbanned yet. So the executive order that Trump made opens the door for that to be a possibility. But I guess the bill that was signed in 2007 actually needs to be revised in order to completely get rid of the ban. It has to do with like the power consumption, basically a ratio between the power consumption and the brightness. And because incandescent bulbs have a ton of non-visible infrared and a bit of UV light as well, they're considered inefficient because those wavelengths are contributing to the total brightness of the light. Meanwhile, there's no consideration of like, oh, the light diet really matters, and
Right.
that infrared and UV light is extremely important. They're essential nutrients for the body, and we're completely removing them from the indoor environment.
Right. Well, getting I splurged on my Black Friday gift to myself was a really nice spectrometer.
Oh, good.
And
Wait, which one did you get?
I
I
got
really
this
want one.
Seconic,
Okay.
I think it's like a 2200 or 82. I'll send it to you. I got it
Okay.
on eBay. So I didn't
Oh,
buy a
great.
brand new one. I got it half price, which was still like $1,200.
I'm
Um,
sure. Yeah.
some people buy TVs and furniture. I buy a spectrometer for
Great.
myself, but it was really fun. I'm like a Ghostbuster person just going around my house with the meter all the time. But when you see the difference between an infrared bulb with a spectrometer versus an LED is quite shocking, because looking at a spectrometer and seeing like it's the high amount of red and infrared and the low amount of blue, it's like kind of a
Yep.
slide, versus an LED, there's a huge spike of blue and then pretty much no red infrared. And you're thinking like, maybe this isn't such a big deal. But then when you understand light, what it does to your hormones, your cortisol, your blood sugar, looking at Dr. Glenn Jeffrey's work, he shows that blue light exposure actually increases insulin, increases cortisol, like decreases proper metabolic response to food. You're like, wait a minute, do we need to be sitting under these lights all the time? Like, this doesn't, it's
Exactly.
not healthy for us to be in this sort of environment.
Absolutely,
So
and that's
yeah,
coupled with the fact that the high blue is also coupled with the absence of
correct.
infrared. And also, Dr. Jeffrey's work showed that even just 15 minutes of deep red light exposure, 30 or 45 minutes before an oral glucose tolerance test, reduced the glucose response by 30%. So, like,
Right.
we're both restricting the infrared, which is a direct nutrient to our mitochondria. It's able to stimulate mitochondrial water and energy production. And then we're also coupling that with intense blue exposure, which actually impairs mitochondrial function on our surfaces, on our skin, eyes, and proximal brain regions. So it's like actually a perfect storm for metabolic and mitochondrial issues in that kind of a light environment.
Right. Which most people are in, they just don't know any
Yes,
better. You get a new house,
absolutely.
like we moved in here in 2022, everything is bright blue, Bluetooth. I mean, I get to a house, I'm like, what can I undo?
Yeah,
What can I unwire? What can like, this is not going to work for my kids, for my family. Um, but people don't understand the impact of these things on their health, and even just the Wi-Fi and non-native EMF, how that takes your cellular water down 15 to 20%. It's
absolutely. I
yeah,
mean, that's a form of light too. Most people
right,
don't think about non-native EMFs as light, but they are. They're just in the radio wave frequencies, so they're non-visible. You can't see them, but that doesn't mean our cells and our mitochondria aren't seeing that light. They
right,
are, and they're responding to it, and it's completely foreign. Like, we never encounter these frequencies in nature. I mean, there's a very, very small amount of radio frequencies that can get through the atmosphere from the cosmos, but it's like imperceptible,
yep,
basically. And it's always rounded out with the Schumann resonance, the Earth's magnetic field, the sunlight, like grounding force. That's always in one package in nature, but the environments we're curating indoors, just like non-native EMF hell, with blue light hell, with like bad food, with not moving our bodies, and it's like this perfect storm of just, it's actually pretty incredible our biology can withstand
I
this to a
know.
certain extent.
I know. And it does, but at a certain point it starts to break down, and it
Yeah.
it it becomes more and more prevalent. A lot of the people that work with me are in their 40s and 50s, and that's when we've got severely broken body clocks. And
Absolutely.
that's the first thing I'm going to work on before I even have you change your diet. The evening environment, and anybody joining, Dr. Alexis and I are talking about light. We're talking about understanding and optimizing your light environment. I've got an app that helps you do that. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But if you want a link to it and a discount code, which is Alexis, just one word, just comment app below this video and I will send you the link to that. But the evening environment, speaking of metabolism and these kind of backwards things that we're doing to our bodies, we need to block the blue and green light, which I think a lot of people are starting to talk about with blue blockers. But lux in the evening is also something that you can actually have a lot of red lights around that don't have blue and green, but they're too bright, and that
Yeah.
can continue that production of cortisol. And so what I found is 10 lux and below the 3 hours before bed. And that's why I love the lux meter on the app too, because it's like
Yes.
you can understand, okay, I've got a red light, but it's so bright that it's still going to cause some cortisol issues potentially and block melatonin production, right?
Exactly, yeah, because it's really blue light and bright light will both
Right.
suppress melatonin release. So very, very important. That's why I also recommend, like, if people use red light panels, if they want to use it on near infrared mode
Yeah.
in the evening, I'm okay with that. But the red mode is so bright that you don't want to have that sort of a stimulus in the, like you said, 3 hours before you're winding down for bed. The other thing maybe I'll add really briefly is, like, people may see the units of lumens versus lux, and I think it's kind of important to know the difference. So the lumens of a light source is like the total light output from that source, versus lux is adjusted for basically your proximity to the light source.
Yes.
So when you're measuring lux with the, like, let's say with the My Circadian app, you want to measure it from like where you are relative to your eyes and your skin,
Eyes.
basically.
Yep. Yep.
Yes, exactly. So hold the phone and like do it close to your face versus like going up to the light
And
source and measuring it directly.
correct.
Exactly. So I mean, it can be interesting to do both, but like if
Yeah.
you want to know its effect on your body, then you want to have it actually close to your body when it's taking the measurement.
Yeah. Yeah, that's important because people will message me and they're like, I used the app and I put it up to the lamp and it said, 300. I'm like, yeah, but you're not gluing your face to your lamp, I hope.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So it's important to just understand that difference because, like, for example, my sky portal, if I measure it right up against the sky portal, it's 10,000 lux. But if my sky portal is across the room and I'm sitting on the other side of the room, I'm not getting 10,000 lux of light where
Right.
I am sitting. So you can just kind of think about, if you're going to be in an indoor environment, curating a light environment during the day that has enough of that bright full spectrum light that's kind of nearby you so that you're getting enough of that into your eyes.
Yep. With Lux, so someone wants to know about contacts. With Lux, it's less of an issue. With getting UV exposure, that is more of an issue.
Yeah,
I don't know if
actually,
you
I
want to
can
dive into
add
that a little
something.
bit.
So I made a post last week about UV light in the eyes. And at the end of that post, I gave a couple of recommendations. So first and foremost, the best scenario is having naked eyes when you're getting your morning light, when you're getting your midday light. Sometimes that's not going to be possible. So I gave a couple options for people who wear glasses and contacts. Glasses in a lot of ways are easier because you can easily pop them off and then have your naked eyes exposed to the light source. But another step that you can take if you're wearing glasses is you can request a special type of lens material from your eye doctor. They're called CR39 lenses. They're
Oh,
not like the standard polycarbonate lenses. So polycarbonate lenses block about basically all UV light. And typically they will also add coatings onto them too to make sure that's like 100% blocking UV light. But the CR39 lenses let through about 55 to 60% of UV light. And so I have gotten them in my partner's glasses. We went to Lens Crafters. We requested the CR39 lenses. There was no problem. I did the same thing at the local, like America's Best, also fine. I know Viva Rays also sells their UV transmitter lenses, which use CR39 lenses. And then on the contact lens front, you can get this brand called Dailies Total One. It comes in
yep.
a purple box. Those are quite UV permeable relative to basically every other contact on the market. There may be a couple others that are somewhat UV permeable, but I know for sure that the Dailies Total Ones are a good choice and probably the best choice if you're going to wear contacts and you're not going to be able to, not wear them if you're out and about, let's say. So those would
Right.
be two really good options if you have corrective lenses and you want to optimize your light exposure into your eyes. But at the end of the day, naked eyes is the best choice if it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And someone wants to know, what does UV do specifically when taken through the eye? I mean, like, we have all day, right? we,
I
we could talk
know.
for hours about the things that UV does when it goes through the eyes, correct?
Oh, yeah. So, like, also in that same post that's on my profile from like last week, I get into this and it really relates largely to the POMC story. So, pro-opiomelanocortin is this complex pro-hormone that's cleaved into 10 different hormonal products. It's made in the skin in response to UVB light. It's also made in the brain in response to UVB light exposure through the eyes, and those studies are cited in that post. But this POMC, when it's cleaved, depending on where it's made, the cleavage products are different. So, well, we were talking about blue light earlier. Blue light actually stimulates the production of POMC in a specific part of the pituitary gland that doesn't get fully cleaved into all 10
Right.
products, but it ends at ACTH.
ACTH, yep.
Yes, which then stimulates
Cortisol.
cortisol. Exactly. So
Yeah.
that's how like the blue light cortisol link
Yeah.
happens, blue light through
Yeah.
the eyes. But with UVB light, it stimulates the hypothalamus via both the skin and the eye exposure to make this POMC. And when it's made in the hypothalamus, it's cleaved into all the products, including alpha MSH, which is a factor melanocyte stimulating hormone that stimulates the production of new melanin. But it also helps to suppress appetite and increase
Yes.
energy expenditure
Yep.
at the level of the hypothalamus. And when I was first getting into this light story, I kind of pitched it to my postdoc advisor. And when I told him that, he was like immediately lit up. He was like, well, actually, you know, in this space, we've known alpha MSH is a huge marker for obesity, like genetically
Yes.
speaking, and just this factor that is affected in the context of obesity. So,
Yes.
you know, this is something that's very widely known among researchers in, like, let's say the health space or like the biology and like medical biology space. So that's one product. We also have beta endorphin,
Yes.
which is one of the endogenous opioids that stimulates the opioid receptors, helps to boost dopamine levels, makes you feel better, you know, reduces depression, anxiety, improves cognition, learning, memory. Alpha MSH and beta endorphin also work on the immune system as well to help regulate immunity. And so there's lots of benefits that come out of those two. Of course, there's 8 other peptides that are cleaved from that have all their important functions as well as it relates to metabolism, fat liberation, the fat's ability to get into skeletal muscle, metabolic health, making new melanin, etc. But we can only unlock those peptides if we're exposed to UVB light, natural light into our eyes, onto our skin. And that UVB light window varies depending on where you are and what time of day it is. And that's where Sarah's app, the My Circadian app, really comes into play, because UVB light only just came back for me at the 40th latitude in New Jersey like a week ago. And so before that, we only had UVA light, which is still very important. But UVB light is back now. That means we can make vitamin D.
Yep.
We can make POMC in our skin, in our brain. And we can get all those benefits. And the app helps you understand what time of day you need to actually get out there in order to reap those benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, you know, and like you said in the beginning, there were so many apps that were kind of pushed together. And I had been working in this realm of circadian biology, quantum biology, because I changed my entire life. I changed my metabolism. Somebody that's lost 100 pounds 3 separate times in their life.
Wow.
Always struggled with food, always struggled with emotional eating and like yo-yo dieting. I locked in this sunlight piece every day, consistent with the sunrise UVA light, getting this appropriate amount of brightness to my body every day, consistently, rain or shine, because you can still get what you need on a overcast, cloudy day. The lux is typically high enough still to support these functions in the brain. And then at night, again, blocking the blue light and keeping it dim. And so I created the app because I wanted to have everything all in one place so as many people could really understand this for themselves and learn about it. So if you're just jumping on, if you comment the word app below this video, I'll send you a link to download it, and you can use code Alexis to get a free trial on Apple or Android. That'll give you the free version, gives you a ton of stuff. I mean, you get the dashboard where you can tell what time is daybreak, sunrise, UVA, UVB if it's available, sunset, all that stuff. But the unlimited, it'll give you the opportunity to turn on notifications, which I like, because I don't want to open up my phone first thing in the morning. I don't want to go in there and start dopamine going. I want dopamine to come from sunlight. It's a much cleaner energy. And so it'll give me a notification on the front of my phone. I'm like, okay, sunrise is happening, UVA is happening. And it makes things easier so I can stay more disciplined about not going on the phone.
Absolutely. And yeah, like you just alluded to, that there's a really special time of day when we're transitioning from sunrise into UVA rise that's very conducive to healing. UVA light is really important. So it's a major stimulator of nitric oxide production. Nitric oxide is a really important signaling free radical that's made in the body. It's also responsible for creating vasodilation, or the widening of blood vessels, in order to deliver nutrients and oxygen to tissues, as well as to remove waste products from tissues. Helps to support flow throughout the body. We can kind of think of it that way. It's also really important from a blood pressure regulation standpoint. People who have high blood pressure, hypertension, typically have issues in the nitric oxide synthesis pathway, whether it's because, you know, they're never getting UVA light, or they're under a lot of blue light, they're under a lot of, like, they're cortisol dominant, let's say. Their mouth breathing versus nasal breathing. Nasal breathing is a really important route by which the body can make nitric oxide as well. Basically, when air goes by the hairs within the nose, that mechanical force over the hairs actually stimulates the production of nitric oxide. But for UVA light, it's actually the interaction of the UVA light directly with your skin that creates that nitric oxide that then can diffuse into the bloodstream. And that's important to note, because what that means is that the more skin you have exposed, the bigger effect you have. So for somebody with hypertension, it means like sunning your body naked, ideally, because then you're going to maximize the amount you're producing. That's going to really help with your cardiovascular health and also just organ health in general. We need blood flow to all of our tissues in order to have health in those tissues. So if blood flow is impaired, then we can get hypoxia, pseudohypoxia, and that's where, like, really optimizing the nitric oxide synthesis pathways is crucial. And a lot of people will think about, like, dietary nitrates, like beets or whatever, for nitric oxide, but sunlight and UVA light is really number one. Exactly. Also, red and infrared light also stimulate nitric oxide to a certain extent as well. And we're getting, of course, the perfect combination of frequencies when we're getting natural light. So I highly recommend it. And UVA is, I think, even, I don't know about in Alaska or like very northern regions or very southern regions, but around here, we're getting UVA light year round. Exactly.
Yeah, that's one thing I found out with the app, is that there are people in like Sweden, Norway, where UVA goes away for a while. I had no idea. I thought everyone had. Well, now that I have an app that tells people when it is, I was getting all these support requests from like Norway, Sweden. They're like, UVA's gone, UVA's gone. I'm like, well, that's just and I'm having my developer, like, I'm like, fix this. And he's like, no, it's the angle of the sun is not getting above that 10 degrees in those really extreme northern climates. I'm like, whoa.
That's wild. Well, that's where the cold piece really comes in, because we talk about
cold and infrared, right?
Yes. When you get cold and infrared, of course, you're retaining your red infrared light year round. If the sun is out, you're getting those frequencies. When you get cold, cold is very stimulating to the mitochondria in every cell of your body, but also in particular within the brown fat, which is the metabolically active fat depot. It literally looks brown because of the mitochondrial density. And its job is to help maintain your body temperature. I think something like 30% of a baby's fat tissue is brown fat, because they have a very high surface area to volume ratio, which means that they dissipate heat very easily. So they need that brown fat to maintain their core temperature in the face of, you know, this issue. And so, I mean, it's something like less than 10% of adults are walking around with any detectable brown fat, because nobody gets cold. Everybody's sitting at like 70 degrees year round indoors. They never get that challenge to help maintain those brown fat depots. However, getting cold can help you to either build back that brown fat or expand what's called beige fat, which forms within your white subcutaneous fat. Basically, any subcutaneous fat can become more beige-like, where it functions like brown fat. It's a little bit different, like if we're speaking embryologically, but anyway, functions very similarly. And when you're making heat, infrared light, from brown fat, from your mitochondria in general, you're not only making infrared light, you're also making UV light. So the mitochondria make UV biophotons. Exactly. So whenever you're stimulating the production of infrared light, of heat in the body, you're also, by definition, also stimulating UV light production, because the same pathway that makes infrared biophotons is making UV biophotons. So that internal UV light production is supplementing for the lack of UV light in the environment. And so, you know, nature doesn't make mistakes. So it's no surprise that a body has a compensatory mechanism to deal with that, given that people, you know, a large chunk of people ended up migrating north and having to deal with climates like this. And now we actually see, I mean, it's pretty interesting when we think about like haplotypes and stuff, because the uncoupled mitochondria, which have uncoupled the flow of electrons through the electron transport chain, which makes ATP in the mitochondria, they've uncoupled that flow of electrons from the production of energy in order to release heat as a byproduct. So the more uncoupled the mitochondria are, the more heat you can release. And so people who have mitochondria or maternal genes that come from Scandinavia, let's say, you're going to be better equipped to deal with colder temperatures naturally, just because your mitochondria are built for that. And it's actually really interesting when we see like how, for example, in North America, people with light skin, light eyes are really prominent across the continent, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
even though genetically it's really coming from Northern Europe.
Northern,
That's where
yeah,
it
I'm an
stems from.
H2, which is
Yeah,
like,
I'm an
yeah.
H2 as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so my mom's side is Scandinavian, my dad's side is West African, a little bit of Southeast Asian. So yeah, we actually share the same haplotype, so we're both really good at getting cold and leveraging cold to make light internally. People who have more coupled mitochondria, who come from more equatorial regions on the maternal side,
Mm-hmm.
they can absolutely still make light internally. They still have
Yes.
brown fat they can build, they can still make beige fat. It just may take a bit more of an
It's harder.
adaptation
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
Exactly. But going slow and gradually increasing over time, you can still reap the benefits of that.
Yeah, and I push those clients a little bit to do a little bit of cold when they live in a northern
Yeah.
environment, but I'll push them a little bit more towards sauna. Those are the
Yes.
people I'm going to say you're probably going to want to get a UVB lamp
Yes.
with
Same.
red and infrared in the winter. Like
Yep.
EMR Tech has the Krypton, which I'm loving, but I also have a Sperity with a red light therapy setup as well that I used for years. But those are the people I'm going to say, if you are Southern haplotype, if that's where your roots are really, it's the mothers, like as Alexis said, it's from your mother. So you get the benefit of melanin and
Yeah.
the
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah, because melanin's harder for me to come by. I have to work on that, but I can get pretty tan now after doing this for years.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, my southern people, they have to work a little bit harder to do keto. They have to work a little bit harder to do cold. They can still do it, but
Yep.
it takes longer.
Yep.
And that's why I don't know about you, but for me, people that have the hardest time in the winter are my southern haplotypes, you
Yes.
know, that live in Michigan, that live in Canada, that live in these really northern places. Their mitochondria are not necessarily meant to be in those environments. Couple that
Yep.
with blue light exposure, lack of sunrise, lack of UVA, lack of even just the natural light environment, and tons of blue light at night. And I think it speeds up the heteroplasmy rate for these people tremendously.
Absolutely. Yeah. I totally agree. And I mean, if anybody that has, so first of all, if you have any raw data file, like a .txt file from any genome sequencing company, you can take that raw data file and go to a website called jameslick.dna.com. I can post it in my story after this so you can
Yeah.
visit my stories and find it. But anyway, you can plug in your raw data file there and it will spit out your most likely haplotype based on that data. So that's how I found out I'm like H2A2A1 or something like that. But so that's useful. If you don't have a data file, you don't necessarily need it. You can also just understand
Do
like
research.
where your mother's ancestry came from. Exactly. So like your mom, your mom's mom, your mom's mom's mom, like where did they hail from? Did they have light skin? Did they have dark skin? That's a kind of a proxy for what part of the world they came from. Obviously not perfect, but that's a good way to just at least get a sense for that. And like you mentioned, using something like a Sperty. So in the wintertime, sometimes, especially if I'm feeling like I'm coming down with something, I'll use the
Yes.
Sperty, the vitamin D light, which is about 80% UVB, 20% UVA. I'll either use it with my Mito Red panel or I'll go outside and just like leverage sunlight with the panel so that I'm also getting that red and infrared, because we're really always meant to receive, like you mentioned, UV light with an abundance of red and infrared. That's how nature packages it. And so helping to round out that light spectrum is important if we want our bodies to accept the light accept that photonic energy to the greatest extent possible.
Yeah. Yeah. So don't feel like you're screwed if you're one of these people. There's definitely still things you can do to optimize your health.
Oh
And I
yeah.
would say top 10 would be getting out there in the morning, getting enough brightness for everyone, and then making sure your evening is dim enough. Those are two big things for everyone. I don't care what you're dealing with, because I'm sure you get a lot of very specific questions about very specific health conditions. And my
Yeah.
answer a lot of the time is we still need to do this. Like it's got to happen, you know?
Yes. You
Yeah.
can't replace the foundations. They're always going to be there. And like as human beings, we just have specific environmental inputs that are required for us to be healthy. And if we don't have them over long periods of time, we run into issues. That's basically how that works. Also, circling back to the coupled mitochondria real quick, I don't want to make it sound like these individuals are like at some sort of disadvantage. It's actually kind of to the contrary. So, I mean, there's pros and cons to both. On the other hand, if you have uncoupled mitochondria from northern regions, you're more adaptable in different environments.
To
So you
go
can be
south.
north, you can be south, like you have options. but the coupled mitochondria are so efficient at making energy. And so if
Mm-hmm.
you can curate the right environment for your mitochondria, and if they're coupled, like for example, if we look at all the top marathon runners, they usually come
Right.
from, a lot of them come from Nairobi, Kenya, which is not only equatorial, it's also at a very high elevation. So their UV is off the
Wow.
chain. That's
Oh,
why their
yeah.
skin is so dark, because the melanin density they have to harness that high energy, photonic energy from the sun is just, maxed out basically. And there's
Yeah.
something called human photosynthesis, whereby light from the sun, or light in general, but the high energy light from the sun, which is the UV light, is really, really powerful. It's stimulating melanin. And when melanin gets stimulated, it's able to split water molecules to make free electrons that can power the mitochondria. Also
Hydrogen.
makes molecular hydrogen, makes molecular oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's extremely advantageous from an efficiency standpoint, and from, like, basically you're not relying on food as much, because now you can get
Right.
your energy directly from the sun via
Sunlight.
melanin.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's an immense benefit to having that haplotype as well. If you're in the right environment, you can really be a superhuman.
Yeah. Agree. It's eat the sun. I've heard
Yeah.
people say before. I mean, you quite literally can.
Yeah.
Um,
Totally.
yeah. Yeah.
So it's very cool.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, anybody watching, we have been talking about the My Circadian app. If you want to support Dr. Alexis's work, she does really amazing things. Make sure you're following her. And you can also comment app underneath this video. I'll send you a link for the app and the code Alexis. That'll give you a free trial on Apple or Android. What else do we want to cover? Anything else? I feel like this was a pretty awesome chat. I'm definitely
Yeah.
saving this on my page. I'll invite
Oh,
you to
great. Me
collab if
too.
you want to. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to do that. Let me see if there's anything else that we should talk about. So we kind of covered different light sources indoors, pros and cons, the benefits of natural light. We didn't talk about grounding. I mean, when we're talking about bioenergetics, there's like the third pillar that we didn't talk about. We talked a little bit about,
Magnetism, yeah.
diet. We get electrons and protons from diet. And basically, let me step back for a moment. When we're eating for micronutrients, but we're mostly eating for electrons and protons to power our mitochondria to make
Correct.
energy and metabolic water. So there's different ways to get especially the electrons. So we can get them from food, carbohydrates, fats, proteins. We can get them from sunlight, like I mentioned. When sunlight stimulates melanin, it can create free electrons. So that's another way. The third pillar is really grounding. So getting your bare feet or the palms of your hands in contact with the earth, with stone, sand, concrete, as long as it's not coated.
Right.
You can receive those electrons through those sources. And all three of those pillars, in my mind, are equally important in a lot of ways if we're looking to properly power our systems. So
Definitely.
much today, like basically all modern humans are powered only by food.
Right.
And they're completely missing the sun and the grounding portions, which I think is setting people up for failure.
It is. And it's going to dysregulate your appetite. I mean, I just had a client today that she's struggling with insulin resistance. And she's like, my appetite is so dysregulated. I'm like, all right, I'm going to give you some nutritional strategies to follow. But the stuff with the light is a lot more powerful. And she's in a beautiful environment with a very mild climate. I'm like, how often are you going outside? Can you just go sit out on the ground? She's like, well, I feel bad. I don't walk enough. I'm like, I don't care if you're walking right now. Like, you got 100 pounds to lose. Go sit on the grass in the sunlight. That's all you got to do. And do that throughout your day, because of that impact of alpha MSH to regulate the appetite, because of the electrons you're going to get from the earth that will literally power your mitochondria. Those two things alone will help you with the appetite regulation, the blood sugar regulation. It's going to, those neurotransmitters, neurohormones that are, the serotonin and the dopamine, those things, when they're dysregulated, also create cravings and issues and wanting to eat. And so very, very easy things that you can do that people just kind of write off, but we're so disconnected. Again, yeah, people are only using food as fuel. And if you look at like Dr. Alexander Wunsch and like Dr. Lieberman and some of these researchers, some of them say it's like 90% of it can be light, but I say like 1/3 of it is food and the other 2/3 light, magnetism, and of course cellular hydration. So yeah,
totally. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if like somebody is super melanated in their skin. They can probably get a lot of their energy from the sun in the right environment. I would love to do studies about this really in my light lab in the future, because it's so easy to make generalizations. But whenever we in science, and you talked about earlier, like using studies in order to inform your behavior, well, to make a comment on the concept of like following research. Like there's no light controls in any of our studies.
No, they're all under
This is something
blue
Jack Kruse
light.
talks about a lot. Exactly. So like, what is the light environment in which we're collecting the data? If that were a natural light environment, we would probably get completely different outcomes. So
yeah,
that's an important thing to note. A lot of studies also, most studies actually will use statistics to remove outliers from the data set.
Right.
And so you may have outliers, which are kind of the most interesting data points because it's like, wow, what's happening in these individuals that's making them different? Instead of appreciating their uniqueness, we remove them from the data set because they're inconvenient. And then we report averages in the data set that's like, okay, this is what happened on average. But the problem with averages is it may not apply to any one individual within the group. And so when it comes to like, you know, really finding what works for you as an individual, it really comes down to trying things and seeing what makes you feel good and what works in the medium and long term. Like you kind of have to be your own scientist in your own life in order to optimize your health. It's not going to be a one size fits all. But the caveat to that is that there are specific inputs that are just important for all humans, which are the light, water, magnetism pieces, which is like the natural light and getting grounding and, you know, eating seasonally. Like all of these are really important approaches for humans in general. And then when we're talking about outside of that foundation, there can be some flexibility in, you know, which diet type may be best for you, given, you know, your background genetically and what your goals are. And there's a ton of nuance and context that can come into that. But really nailing down those foundations is absolutely crucial in order to then build upon that in like a hierarchy to optimize your health for your goals in your context.
Absolutely. And I would say that 97% of people are not doing these very basic things with light that are extremely easy. It's just a matter of understanding. I need to be outside at sunrise. I need to be outside at UVA. When UVB is available, I need to get out there, get skin in the game, and actually power up my body through that. And then the other thing about the app it gives you is the sun exposure timer. So it's going to take your skin type, the UV index. You can put in cloud cover, how many, what kind of clothing you're wearing or not. Because I prefer to wear like zero clothing. I've got a nice private area for sunbathing. No one can see. My husband's like, what about drones? I'm like, you know what?
Give them a show. If they're working that hard to see you, like, okay.
Go ahead. Come on. Like, I really don't care at this point. But, you know, that's a great thing with the app is that I built that in there as well because a lot of people, you know, and now that UVB is coming back, it's a good time to start doing this, to start building up that solar callus so that when summertime comes, you're not just going from like 0 to 100 and then all of a sudden you have a sunburn and you're like, the sun is bad, it's horrible, look what happened to me. Like, well, you should have been going outside all year long. You should have been slowly building up this tolerance and getting the benefits of vitamin D when it becomes available. So it's it's one of those.
And I made a post about the building a solar callus last year that I'll probably pin to my profile now that the season's coming back, because so many people will say sun is bad, I got burned, not realizing that so many aspects of your lifestyle are increasing your ability to get burned.
Sunset. That I don't know if you've seen that study that shows that it directly impairs your body's ability to repair the skin if you eat too close to bedtime. I mean, that's direct right there. Blue light at night also impairs the repair processes that are needed to prevent cancer. Not getting enough infrared to make near infrared in particular to make subcellular melatonin that will actually help to deal with some of the, you know, quote unquote damage or the ROS from UV light. And you can make near infrared in the shade. You can make that from sunrise all the way, or daybreak actually, all the way to nightfall. So that near infrared, far infrared, all of those are always available during the, you know, during light hours. So people are missing out on those. They just go out in the middle of the day, or they look at these studies, which we could talk all day about this, but they look at the studies done on narrow band UV inside of a lab under blue light in vitro, like, so in petri dishes. It's like, this is not a study of like somebody doing a proper sunlight protocol, you know?
Yeah, no, there's not been a single, and that's something I'm trying to change with the light lab too, is we've never done studies on people in natural light. It's always with specific frequencies in isolation. It's not relevant to the real world. Really. So we're looking at results and we're demonizing the sun for what narrow band UV light is doing in the context of like a laboratory setting, which of course is also full of non-native EMFs and toxic blue light from overhead lights and things like that. So there's no light controls in any of these. And like you mentioned, there's these skin clocks. So the circadian rhythm is coordinated in all tissues of the body. So when you're eating at inappropriate times of day, or you're being exposed to light at inappropriate times of day in the evening, then your skin clocks are basically getting confused because that master clock in your brain is now getting also confused about what time of day it is. And when that happens, now our skin, which could have been robust to UV exposure, let's say midday the next day, is now more likely to burn because it doesn't actually have an understanding of what time of day it is. And the mitochondria in the skin are also required to make new melanin in those melanocytes. And so if our mitochondria are being impaired due to, let's say, a lot of blue light exposure, which again directly impairs mitochondrial function on the surfaces of your skin, if you're exposed to a ton of non-native EMFs, which also impairs mitochondrial function in the skin, if you're eating a ton of processed seed oils and not enough omega-3s, that also can create damage in the skin and pro-inflammatory factors. So there's a ton that people are doing that's setting themselves up for failure and not even realizing it. And so I think it's really important to, like you said, start now building up that solar callus and gradually acclimating to UV light, especially if you're somebody that has very fair skin that needs to gradually build up that melanin in order to tolerate high intensity sunlight. Start now. You know, you can leverage cold as well. It's really good for mitochondria. Turn off your Wi-Fi while you're sleeping. Change out your light bulbs to incandescent bulbs. Get outside in the morning. Get some midday sun. Block blue light at night. Boom. Like, that's really the fundamentals of what you need to do. Obviously, timing your eating, like having smaller meal in the evening, 3 to 4 hours before bedtime, bigger breakfast if you want a big meal. Lunch is honestly kind of negotiable in the summertime. Sometimes I'm not even hungry at all for lunch personally.
If when I get a lot of UV light and I'm outside, I'm not hungry a lot of the time. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not going to force myself to eat.
No, definitely not. Definitely
I feel
not.
like that's like a lot
Basics.
of quantum biology is, it's really getting back to basics and getting back to listening to the natural cues your body's sending you. Like, why should I drink if I'm not thirsty? Why should I eat if I'm not hungry? Like, getting into those rhythms, once you anchor in like your circadian rhythm and these light hygiene habits, you can then actually really, I feel like, drop into your intuitive knowing more so. So it's like, you know what you need in the moment.
Yes, 100%. I'm way more intuitive, 5, 6 years in than I was back in the day. I'm like, oh no, that sounds like a terrible idea, and I'm firm in that.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's wild.
Yeah,
awesome.
It is. Somebody asked about Wi-Fi. I just said to like try to turn your Wi-Fi off at night or put it on a timer so that it turns off during your sleeping window.
Yeah.
Because that is a form of light that can disrupt your sleep recovery, mitochondrial function, etc. So that's a good idea. Also, not spending a ton of time in the same room as your Wi-Fi router, because the closer you are to a source of non-native EMFs, the higher the intensity of the wave is. And so you want to create some distance between you and the sources. That means also not keeping your phone in your pocket, not using your laptop on your lap.
Don't charge your phone beside your bed when you're sleeping. Don't do that. Don't even keep the phone in the bedroom if you can help it. Yes. I know a lot of people are like, I have teenagers or parents that I keep my phone in the bathroom, which is pretty far away, but if the ringer is on, I can still hear it going off in the night. So you can still turn your ringer on and have it in a separate room or right outside your bedroom door. You're probably still going to hear it, but just don't put it next to your bed. Keep that away from your bed. That's one thing a lot of people do that they have, and I did for years. I had no idea this is impacting my sleep. This is destroying my pineal melatonin, because again, it's like you said, a form of light that you can't see with your eyes, but your body can sense it. We're light beings. We're electromagnetic beings, and we're powered by light. So it's really important that we just do these basic things to support our bodies, to support our health, and I think go a long way for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And I had a post a few days ago that was actually really heartbreaking. It was showing the effects of a cell phone tower adjacent to a school, and they were comparing health outcomes between students.
I've seen that study.
Yeah, it was
diabetic.
So like there were two schools. One was not close to a cell tower. The other one was like 200 meters away from a cell tower. And the kids in the school that were close to the cell tower had higher HbA1c, so higher glucose levels, and higher incidence of type 2 diabetes. And they were all normalized for socioeconomic status, for age, for all these factors. It was done in the Middle East, I think in Saudi Arabia, but I was like,
Yep.
this is crazy and it's really sad. And like so many kids are subjected to these different inputs and like stimuli that they don't even have any control over. So it's really up to us to protect them and advocate for them.
Agree. Yeah, I know. My son is 2, but I'm already looking at farm schools and I'm looking into the future because I think one of the worst things that we do to our children is strap them to an iPad and put them inside of a blue lit classroom.
Yes.
And then, because I know my son is wild, like he loves running, he's singing all the time, he's jumping all the time. I'm like, there's no way in hell this one's going to sit in a classroom with an iPad and do what you tell him to do. He needs to be outdoors. He needs sunlight. He needs grounding. Like we need to harness that energy, right? To encourage him. But this is what we're doing to our children. And then we're all labeling them, you know, with ADD, ADHD, and medicating them when they're set up to fail with these high non-native EMF environments, blue lit screens, the fluorescent lights overhead. I mean, it's just literally a recipe for a metabolic disaster, behavior disaster, depression, anxiety, all the things that our children today are struggling with. And it's like, this is right there in front of our eyes.
Absolutely. And it's gotten so much worse from COVID because now everybody's on tablets and like Chromebooks in schools.
Virtual. Yeah, I know. I know. It's crazy.
So it's really upsetting. And even John Ott's work back from like in the 80s, he filmed the children in the schoolroom like under fluorescent lights. They were super fidgety, like couldn't sit still, couldn't focus. They changed the lights to a full spectrum bulb and suddenly the kids are like calm and they're able to sit still and they're able to learn. And it's like, we've known this for decades and we're not acting on it. We're actually doing the opposite.
Correct. Yeah. It's wild. It really is.
It is. But I mean, these conversations are the most important first step is building awareness so that we can actually know what to even advocate for and what's important.
Yeah. I mean, each one teach one. I love what you're doing. And I love that this collaboration, and there's so many people now that continue chatting about this. And I'm happy to support you and your work. And
thank you. I appreciate it. So there's a couple different, somebody asked in the chat about how to become a client. So I'm not taking new clients, but people can rent my brain for 15, 30 or 60 minutes. So if that's something you're interested in, just DM me on Instagram and we can schedule a time to chat. Outside of that, I have also a book club and a think tank called The Incubator. The first book we're reading is The Body Electric by Robert O. Becker. And so we're going to have our first call for that book on February 24th. But we're also doing roughly weekly watch parties of different important podcasts. And I'm like chiming in with my 2 cents throughout them. And it's been really fun. We also have like a lively Telegram group, lots of community. We have about 200 people in there, like lots of good conversations happening, really good like tribal vibe where it's like a lot of like-minded people together in one place. So it's really fun. You can join that in the link in my bio. And I'm also currently wrapping up a course called Bootcamp Reboot, which is basically talking about all the fundamental inputs. So the first lesson is all about quantum biology. And from there, we're building off of that, talking about leptin and fat loss and performance optimization, cognitive and physical performance. We're talking about the gut and the link to light. So everything is kind of building off that foundation of like the light, water, magnetism pieces. And then basically implementing specific protocols depending on your different goals. So that's also available in my link in bio. I had a few guest speakers there. It was really fun. Also a good community in there. So those are a few different ways that people can interact with me. Otherwise, I'm also posting a ton of free content on my Instagram almost every day and my stories as well. So that's how people can kind of find me and my work if they're interested in learning more.
I love it. And this will stay on my profile.
Me too.
I'll try to put it on the My Circadian app profile as well. And anyone who wants to support Dr. Alexis's work, just comment below this video and use the code Alexis to get a free trial. And that will go towards supporting her work as well. So
thank you so much. This was so fun. I'm like sweating now.
Well, you've been walking the whole time. I'm just sitting here like soaking up the sun.
I need to go get some sun now before I have to leave.
Well, I'm in Georgia. You're in New Jersey, so I have a little bit easier than you. You have a card right now.
We'll get there.
You will.
Eventually.
You will. All
right.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Alexis. It's been awesome. So valuable for everybody. And make sure to check out the app. Use code Alexis, and we'll definitely do this again soon.
Yeah, that sounds good. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Sarah.
Bye. Bye.